September 1944. Northern Europe was shaking under the weight of constant artillery. Allied commanders crowded inside a dim command tent, maps pinned to every surface, red lines marking villages that had already vanished under fire. American generals had seen many battles. They had watched divisions break under pressure, supply lines collapse, and soldiers freeze when machine gun fire opened up. But today, whispers moved through the room. "Wait until you see the Canadians," one officer said quietly. Outside, engines rumbled through the mud. Columns of Canadian infantry moved forward, not loud, not reckless, just precise. Their boots hit the ground with almost mechanical rhythm. Every movement looked practiced, calm, deliberate. One American general leaned forward, studying them through binoculars. "Who are those guys?" "Canadian forces," came the atwet. "They're leading the push near Operation Medusa." The general watched as the men spread out without shouting. Signals were exchanged with simple hand gestures. No chaos, no hesitation. Then artillery opened. The ground shook. Smoke swallowed the horizon. Most units would pause, take cover, regroup, wait for orders. The Canadians kept moving, the moment that changed the atmosphere. A young American aide stared in disbelief. "They're walking straight through that." Machine gun fire cracked from a nearby ridge. Dirt exploded around them. Yet the line stayed steady. Soldiers advanced in coordinated waves, each covering the next with near-perfect timing. One American commander muttered, "They fight like machines." It wasn't an insult. It was respect. Through the chaos, Canadian officers calmly redirected squads, pushing toward a heavily fortified position that Rozvedka had warned might take hours, maybe days, to clear. But something strange happened. Within minutes, the ridge went silent. Smoke drifted upward. The Canadian troops signaled forward. The line kept advancing. The American generals exchanged looks. They had expected a long stalemate. Instead, they were watching something almost surgical. Part 1. Hook. As radio chatter filled the tent, one report came through. Enemy defenses collapsing faster than expected. Canadians already passed first objective. The American generals realized this was not going to be an ordinary operation, and what they would witness next during Operation Medusa would change how they talked about Canadian forces forever. The battlefield changed in minutes. What looked calm from the command tent turned into pure chaos on the front line. Shells landed closer now, throwing mud and metal into the air. Radio calls overlapped. Smoke swallowed entire squads. American observers expected the advance to slow down. It didn't. Canadian infantry moved forward in tight coordination. One section firing, another advancing, another already preparing the next position. No shouting, no panic, just movement. A U.S. officer watched through binoculars and said quietly, "They're not rushing. They're calculating." Machine gun fire erupted from a hidden farmhouse ahead. The attack stalled for a moment, just long enough for everyone watching to assume the push had failed. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of pulling back, the Canadians split into two groups with almost silent precision. One unit pinned the enemy while the other disappeared into smoke and broken hedges. Seconds felt like minutes. Then, silence. The gunfire stopped. A green flare rose into the sky. Objective cleared, the moment the generals realized. Inside the command post, maps were quickly updated. "First defensive line, already gone?" someone asked. Reports kept coming in faster than expected. Positions thought to require hours were falling one after another. Canadian units weren't just attacking. They were reshaping the battlefield faster than planners predicted. One American general leaned back slowly. "Now I understand what they meant. They fight like machines." But on the front line, the cost was real. Medics moved between craters. Tanks burned in the distance. Exhausted soldiers kept pushing, knowing hesitation could mean losing momentum. The Canadians weren't moving fast because it was easy. They were moving fast because stopping meant danger for everyone behind them. Night was coming, but the fighting only grew louder. Dark smoke rolled across the fields as artillery flashes lit the horizon like lightning. The Canadians had pushed farther than expected. Too far, some officers feared. Supply lines stretched thin. Radio signals cracked and faded in and out. Then the warning came. Enemy reserves confirmed. Large movement from the east. Within minutes, the quiet tension exploded into chaos. German armor appeared through the haze. Not a small patrol, but a full counterattack. Engines roared. Machine guns opened up. Tracers ripped across the sky. From the command position, American generals watched the line bend under pressure. One officer whispered, "This is where most advances end." The line holds on the ground. Canadian soldiers dropped into defensive positions with almost automatic discipline. No panic, just fast adjustments. Anti-tank crews moved into place while infantry dug into shallow cover. Orders were short. Gestures, eye contact, quick signals. The first wave hit hard. Explosions threw dirt into the air. Several positions disappeared behind smoke. Tanks rolled forward, firing blindly into the darkness. For a moment, the battlefield looked lost. But then, controlled bursts of fire answered back. Canadian guns struck the lead vehicles. One tank slowed. Another stopped burning. Infantry teams shifted positions before enemy fire could lock onto them. Instead of collapsing, the line adapted. American observers stared in disbelief. "They're reorganizing while under attack," someone muttered. The Canadians weren't just surviving. They were turning the chaos into structure, the turning point. As the counterattack pressed harder, a small Canadian unit pushed forward through shell craters to hold a narrow crossing point. If it fell, the entire advance could be cut off. The fighting there became desperate. Smoke, shouting, muzzle flashes in the dark. Yet the position held. Minutes passed, then more. Finally, enemy fire began to fade. Engines reversed. The counterattack slowed, then stalled. Across the battlefield, exhausted soldiers looked at each other, realizing what had just happened. They had stopped a full assault without losing the line. Back at headquarters, one American general slowly lowered his binoculars. "I've never seen control like that under pressure." Night was coming, but the fighting only grew louder. Dark smoke rolled across the fields as artillery flashes lit the horizon like lightning. The Canadians had pushed farther than expected. Too far, some officers feared. Supply lines stretched thin. Radio signals cracked and faded in and out. Then the warning came. Enemy reserves confirmed. Large movement from the east.